Nice. That's awesome.
The beginning. That's the beginning.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another Hungover podcast. This time on September 9th, 2018, the first weekend of N.F.L. football.
Are you ready for some football? Is that what they say?
And we're going to discuss some of the issues currently happening with the NFL, should it exist, etc. As we get into that, if you would like to help us further discuss these kinds of topics or anything else, you can write to us at gaminghungover@gmail.com. You can submit for us one of the songs or things that we play at the end if you don't listen to the whole thing.
Sure.
At the end we play listener music if they submit it. Or you can join us on YouTube, Google Play, on the iTunes, on the SoundCloud.
Yes.
So you can listen to it, you can watch it, or you can join us live every Sunday as we record these to make sure that you can fully participate in the conversation. Go over to iTunes, write us a review, talk to us about what you thought of our topic selection, what you thought of the podcast, etc. But we won't ask you to do that now. Stay tuned and tell us what you think about us in the iTunes review later down the show.
Yeah.
Julien.
Yes.
That's your name. My name's Yvonne.
Hello.
I ran through the rigmarole as quickly as I could.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. You're doing a great job.
And I'm going to lead us into our first segment of our podcast if you're tuning into us for the first time. We start the show with our rigmarole, but then we switch over to what did you drink last night? What media have you been consuming this week? And I usually start because Julien takes over the other stuff because he never wants to answer this question first.
I
so
hate
Julien,
doing that.
Tell us what happened.
Well, yes, us being the Hungover Gaming YouTube channel, we like to discuss, various drinks that we've been drinking this week. This week I had a nice bourbon, actually. As my lovely girlfriend decided to stop by the liquor store. That we haven't been to the liquor store for a while. She was going over to her friend's house, so she wanted to pick up tequila. And I said, as she was leaving, don't forget that bourbon, because I love that bourbon. And I do love bourbon. This bourbon was, I believe, called Larceny?
Oh, I've had Larceny before.
Larceny bourbon.
Yeah.
Let's bring it up. Yes, Kentucky bourbon. We had this bourbon, and of course, I'm fucking over 21. If you're watching the nice YouTube video, you can check it out in the background. It's a pretty nice bourbon. I'd say it's got a lot of vanilla notes in there. I would say it's not too smoky. It's a little on the sweeter side. And it's pretty smooth, I would say. I had it neat, as I like my bourbon neat. And I had it like 12:30 a.m. It was a bad idea, but I only had one glass of it. But I thought it was. Oh my god, that was so dumb. I was mildly hungover after one bourbon.
Oh my god!
Because I went directly to sleep almost after. No, I stayed up for another hour or two, but that was so dumb. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty decent bourbon. I could see it being in some mixed drinks possibly, or just neat, or on the rocks. I think people like it with ice to cut down on the burning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had Larceny. I think actually we shared a bottle of Larceny when we were in college.
Yeah, we probably did. We went through so many bottles. So.
Yeah. So little note: Julie and I went to college together. We drank bourbon together for a long time because my drink of choice was bourbon, also neat. And Larceny was one of the bottles that I least liked when I had it back in the day. No, I didn't.
I see.
I thought it was fairly flavorless, pretty swill. But maybe they've improved in the years since? It's been 8 years. A lot of things can change.
Quite a long time. It also, I mean, maybe how long do they usually age bourbon? This bourbon doesn't say how long it's aged. But I think they vary in range. You can age it for 12 years, right? So maybe we just got a batch that was better or worse.
That's true, and it's because it is small batch.
It is also small
widely
batch, so
range.
They do range. Actually, very true. They do range. And also, Yvonne, your flavors, your palate does change as you get older. So
that's true.
I
don't know that there is a specific. There has to be has spent at least 2 years stored in charred new oak barrels.
Yes.
So it's at least 2 years. So the really cool thing about Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey is the amount of restrictions placed on it.
Yeah,
they were established by LBJ, and it's new white oak, charred white oak American barrels. It has to be
wasteful.
at least 51% corn. It was basically done to increase the barrel making.
Of course. I mean, and obviously these barrels do get reused for Chardonnay, for instance. And
a lot of beer companies will do them too.
Companies,
you can also do if it's not going to be a straight bourbon whiskey, you can still use those barrels that have that bourbon, those bourbon notes in them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's why, especially with the increased popularity of bourbon over the past, I think, five or so years.
Yeah, definitely.
You've seen a lot more usage of these bourbon barrels in different processes of production of alcohol, like those Chardonnays, etc.
And for instance, you might even get they sometimes just chop up the barrels and you just buy the chips. So, and sometimes winemakers or alcohol makers, spirit makers will throw those chips into their barrel while it's aging to sort of mimic the flavor that you get from a bourbon barrel, just so you get, for cheaper. You can
also use them when you're doing some barbecue.
Also a great idea.
Add those chips in, give them some bourbon smoke.
That smoke. So
let's just turn this podcast into us talking about alcohol. We haven't done that in a long time.
I know we actually haven't, because I don't drink them. But we should just have an alcohol podcast one of these days.
Let's talk about our favorite things. Yeah.
I love bourbon, and I think maybe you guys should go pick up some bourbon, soon. Anyways, Yvonne.
What's your favorite base level bourbon?
My favorite base level bourbon is American Eagle. I think that's what it's called. Or no,
Eagle Rare.
Eagle Rare. Sorry, what the fuck am I saying? Eagle
You're
Rare.
Thinking of the clothing store American
Yes, sorry,
Eagle.
my bad. Eagle Rare. I don't know what I'm talking about. Eagle Rare, I do like a lot. I think
Eagle Rare is a pretty good.
It's
bourbon.
a pretty solid bourbon. I think it's usually around $50 for the 750 ml, or at least in my neighborhood it is. So that's a pretty standard price to get for a nicer bottle of bourbon that I would really just drink straight. I mean, if you're just buying bourbon to mix, then just get Jim Beam or whatever. But for making a lot of mixed drinks, to make a very, very nice mixed drink, maybe get a nicer bourbon. I don't know, but
I have to say that Jim Beam is so cheap just based on the length of the production cycle that they've been in, the cost of creating a new bourbon label, and you saw the explosion of bourbon labels, and like we were talking about, and with the increase of popularity. So bourbon labels increased probably 8 to 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so maybe 12 to 14 years ago, and they exploded onto the market with different labels, different brands. So even the traditional brands would come through and make different labels for them. So for instance, I like Buffalo Trace.
I love Buffalo Trace too.
Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare are the same distillery.
I didn't know that. But
awesome. They're different labels. And then Buffalo Trace also had
$20 cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had a different variant of the Buffalo Trace that was like 1776. So, and that was like their kind of I think that was their attempt to be more like a Maker's Mark or something. Like they had a more interesting bottle. So, but I think they've actually stopped production of 1776 or whatever it was. I don't even remember the year.
Let's look that up. 1776.
It might be 1792.
They've been making bourbon since 1776, I think.
It might be 1792.
Oh, 1792, sorry. The oldest building on the grounds dates back to 1792.
Yeah, so 1792 was their kind of like their hipster label. But most of their stuff is pretty
it
standard.
Is a nice bottle.
Yeah.
Small batch.
And then Buffalo Trace
Wait, no,
also...
this is something different. I'm looking at something different. But this looks
No,
good.
that's it.
Oh, that's it? Okay.
Yeah, that's the Buffalo Trace 1792 label.
Cool.
It's their small batch craft bourbon that they attempted to get off the ground. It eventually ended up, because they couldn't sell enough of it, it ended up being cheaper than the Buffalo Trace at a lot of places.
That's hilarious.
So that was really, really weird.
Did you get it at all?
Yeah, I liked it because it's definitely like a younger label. They definitely didn't have their...
it looks like you can still buy it, so...
Yeah, so Buffalo Trace has a very sharp note to it. It's pretty acidic. For somebody who has like acid reflux like I do. Drinking Buffalo Trace neat can be difficult.
Right.
Not every time, but it can be. So 1792 was much smoother and a bit sweeter. It was actually more akin to the Eagle Rare.
Nice.
Or not the Eagle Rare, to the Larceny.
Oh, Larceny,
in terms of the flavor palette. So that was kind of the one that I went to a lot of the times just because it was easier for me to drink just on a physical level. Because a lot of these, like, I can't drink rye whiskeys.
Right.
For the same reason. It's just really biting. So Basil Hayden's, for instance, is like, is a bourbon that is 51% corn.
Yes.
As dictated by law, and 49% rye.
I think Basil Hayden is owned by Jim Beam, or Bullet is one of those two. I can't remember.
Yeah, there are basically only like 4 distilleries.
Welcome to the Bourbon Podcast, by the way. Let's keep going.
There are it's the Jim Beam distillery.
Yes.
So there are basically like 5 major distilleries that have a lot of smaller labels. And I think that they did that for a specific reason. But what I wanted to highlight from Buffalo Trace is the distillery that makes Pappy Van Winkle, which might be one of the most expensive whiskeys on the market.
Right.
Like if you can
you can only buy it in the South, pretty much, or specifically Kentucky, I think. It's very difficult to find
that. Like how much is a bottle? So the 10-year is like 270.
270. I've looked it up. I want to try it, but I don't know. I would, if I was ever in Kentucky, I would probably buy a bottle, but that's only one bottle in my life will I ever buy. That's a very expensive bottle of alcohol.
Yeah, man. It's the equivalent of basically like your Johnny Walker Blue type level of purchasing.
Mm-hmm. But it's supposed to be good. I've never had
That's the bourbon portion. I really love hard alcohol in terms of like the process of making it. I like it in the same way that a lot of people like wines.
Yes.
So I don't just like the taste of something, but I like the production, how
it's a really scientific process. It's cool. It's also sorry.
Especially when you have like the big restriction of like a Kentucky bourbon has to be 51% corn, right?
At
so
least,
how you do the rest of it is really up to the distiller, and that restriction, even though it seems very small, right? So like you only have 49% of the grain to work with, creates a immense variety of tasting notes.
Yes, I think that's really awesome, and it's such a hard business to get into. I don't know how I would get that job, because that's one of, if I could have a dream, if I think it's like one of my many dream jobs. I have a lot, but I would love to be able to do that, or at least work on that, like on some sort of scale, be some part of the production line in that.
I think it would be a lot of fun to like help design. Like, I don't even know how you would design a mash and be like, yeah, this is the mash that we go with, without like tasting the finished product.
Right,
Like,
you have to wait.
How are
years?
You like, we're gonna do like 3 different mashes right now.
Yeah.
And then the one that we go with in 2 years will be the one that is the appropriate tasting.
Well, that's why they
so
do
it takes
these
like 5 to 10 years.
Small batches, right? So
yeah, I guess.
These are literally tests, exactly what you're saying, the test subject of is this going to make... We wrote down the mash. If it sells well, then we're going to increase production of that 20 years from now.
The irony being, like, that small batch is such a misnomer in terms of, like, it's... Small batch isn't, like, a federal regulation. So you can literally just put small batch on pretty much anything. That's
hilarious. Yeah, I believe that. It's a lot of bullshit goes into labeling and advertisement and word choices.
So I think the generally accepted theory on small batch is like I would accept it as less than like 100 barrels, but then there's also less than 200 barrels and things like that. So I don't know. It depends.
That seems like a lot of barrels to me. I don't know.
In Maker's Mark, they do 1,000 gallons or less. Approximately. So Maker's Mark is also Jim Beam, by the way.
Yes, I know.
And like Jefferson's is the equivalent of 2,400 bottles. So, you go through a lot of things. Anyway, returning to what we were talking about originally, Julien.
We were talking about something there.
You had some larceny. And you were playing some video games this week, and I know one that you and I were both excited for in terms of it coming out this week and getting to play it was the new Spider-Man game.
Yes. Hello, Bro Tendo. Can you stream again? I missed you yesterday. I will be streaming probably Tuesday. I don't know, Yvonne, are you going to be streaming tonight? Do you have time?
Yes, I am. I haven't played Overwatch in a very long time.
So maybe I'll probably be playing Overwatch with Yvonne. I don't typically... This is typically my Sunday stream. But I'll be streaming again on Tuesday, Broteno. But, Yvonne, there was a big, huge game that came out on Friday called Marvel's Spider-Man, an exclusive to the PlayStation 4 made by Insomniac Studios. They're known for games like... and Broteno doesn't like Overwatch, so I'm assuming he's not going to tune into your stream. Sorry, Yvonne. But
that's okay. We don't all like the same games.
Yes, it's true. Now, this game, Insomniac Studios is known for their, sort of superhero-like characters and a third-person open-world experience. So, as you would expect, Spider-Man was a pretty decent fit for them. So they've been making this game for quite some time now. I think we heard about this game maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago. And so that's what I did. I played this game. And Brotendo, what happened is I flushed it because it was running like crap online. But I did play it, so I gave it a chance. Super Smash Flash 2. That's why I stopped playing that game. And Nugget Wood won. What's up? Welcome to the party. Anyways, as I was saying, Spider-Man.
Just a note, the text isn't showing up.
I know. I can't figure out how to fix that on the fly right now, so I'm not going to.
Right.
But anyways,
you can do that when I'm talking about what I did this week, because we haven't gotten to me yet.
Spider-Man, though, is an awesome game. It takes place obviously in New York City, so the the level of photorealism in this city is pretty amazing. I think they relegated the game specifically to Manhattan. I'm still waiting for the day that we get a video game that takes place in New York City that has Brooklyn and Queens at least in it. That would be awesome.
Spider-Man not from Manhattan?
I don't know the Spider-Man lore, but I think he's technically from Queens. But
so why would they base him in Manhattan?
Well, because his job is in Manhattan, and all the crime is apparently happening in Manhattan. I don't know.
Clearly.
But I mean, it's Nugget Wood. I'm doing just fine. How are you guys? But I'll tell you, this game is very fun. The strong suit of this game and what Insomniac works hard and tirelessly to make fluid is the movement throughout the city. So Spider-Man is known for thank you so much for hosting us with one viewer. Thank you very much. You're tired and you don't like Spider-Man. Well, I'm sorry I'm talking about Spider-Man, but I gotta talk about it. Great game. The swinging is so fluid and the movement is pretty spot on. You don't really run into any hiccups when you're moving, and you pretty much feel like Spider-Man. And I was impressed with, I mean, this rendition of Manhattan is not, 1-to-1, for instance, but it has all the major neighborhoods in Manhattan that you would come to expect. And so having a general feeling for the geography of Manhattan can help you out a lot in the game, in the early parts at least. So getting around Manhattan is very easy if you know that. I am American. Thank you for asking. But anyways, what I was saying is that I was pissed off that they included Columbia University and not City College. That's all I have to say.
Oh, that is bullshit.
It's kind of bullshit. But otherwise, the combat is pretty fun. I mean, it's come to, the standard superhero third-person combat is pretty much like Arkham Knight and Arkham Asylum now. Rocksteady Games came up with a really great formula for combat where your superhero has to take out a bunch of thugs at once. So Spider-Man has very similar moves that Batman may have in those games. He can go on the rafters and be silent and, take out enemies one by one. And Nugget Wood is from England. Thank you for stopping by to our sweet podcast. And now I understand why you're tired, because I believe it's almost midnight there.
Yeah, it must be super late.
Yeah, so thanks for stopping by.
Plus 6 hours? Plus
and
5
also,
hours?
Thanks for the host. Yeah, I think it's plus 6, so it's 11. No, it's almost midnight then. So anyways, Spider-Man, highly recommend it. Game looks beautiful. The game is even more beautiful in motion, and the swinging is super fun. And it's a open world map with actually pretty interesting, collectibles. The collectibles are like backpacks. Peter Parker leaves backpacks around. For some reason, I don't really know why he left like personal items, and then he goes into the backstory of that item. So if you go seek out the collectibles, there's more story to unfold. There's a lot of bad guys in the game. You can see they're obviously foreshadowing other bad guys in the Spider-Man universe, like Doc Ock, for instance. It's not much of a spoiler. You find out that you're working for Dr. Octavius, who's obviously Doc Ock, but he hasn't, become Doc Ock yet. So they're setting it up for a sequel, I assume. I've only beaten the first third of the game currently. But there's a lot of fun enemies to fight and, standard Spider-Man. I suggest if you're looking for a really fun AAA experience right now, and you have a PS4, this is the game to get. I think
it looks really pretty. I tuned into your stream on, was it Friday, Saturday?
Yeah.
Where you were playing, and you came to Trinity Church, and I was like, mm-hmm. I've been there.
Yeah, the things are pretty photorealistic. It's awesome.
Yeah. We've had a litany of games that have attempted to capture Manhattan specifically. Mm-hmm. which is annoying as a person who
Tell me
has
that.
now really enjoyed the other boroughs.
Play this. I meant to play this in the background while we were talking about it, the Spider-Man trailer.
But like we can see the evolution of graphics and things going from what was that game where you were the shape-shifting mutant guy? Had a sequel.
Infamous. What?
Nah,
No.
not Infamous.
Shape-shifting? And Nugget Wood has
Prototype.
school in the morning. Damn, man. Oh, Prototype. Oh, yeah. So
Right.
that was the counterpart to Infamous, in a way.
So you go for like Prototype.
They came out at the same time.
I didn't know Infamous at all.
Infamous
Prototype.
is the PS4 and PS3 exclusive superhero game. Prototype was like a superhero third-person open-world game, and they actually happened to come out at the same time pretty much. And I think, as we can tell, Infamous was the more popular franchise because they had one, well, not recently, but it was a while ago, Infamous Second Son.
Right,
But,
yes. Prototype 2 was released in 2012, but not to, I think, a lot of hype.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's fun to see like the evolution. If you could play it like
No, you would. Thank you so much for following me, my friend. We do podcasts every Sunday. But yeah,
could you play the Prototype trailer?
Prototype
just briefly?
trailer? Sure.
We're really meandering, and I like this. This is like one of the better intro conversations we've had, I feel.
Yes. Prototype official trailer. Andrew Wilson. Let's do the opening cinematic trailer.
So going from Prototype back in the day to now is
yeah,
pretty intense.
I didn't know it was in New York City, actually.
Yeah, they made a huge deal of it being like New York City. See, New York City Taxi.
Yeah.
Any other stuff that you played or watched this?
I watched. Continuing on with my quest to learn Cantonese, I watched a movie called Love in a Puff, which was it's like a rom-com, strange movie. Came out in 2010. It basically followed. It was about that time in Hong Kong they started banning, or maybe it takes. I don't know when the Hong Kong government banned the smoking cigarettes in public. They banned it in certain places, like inside, for instance, like we have it in America. That wasn't a thing in Hong Kong, and I guess until about 10 years ago. And so this movie follows that ban in the movie, and so the characters in the movie are forced outside to go smoke, and it follows their interactions, and eventually two people fall in love and things like that. So
was there an American remake of this game? Or not
movie?
This game, this movie?
Maybe.
No. Oh, what it is? There was on the UK show, the IT Crowd.
Mm-hmm.
There was an exact like very similar situation where the smokers were all forced outside.
Yeah, they have some funny scenes like that there where they play very dramatic music. There's for instance there's a scene, I guess, well, spoiler alert for an 8-year-old movie that most people won't go and watch. There's a scene towards the end of the movie where the government announces that they're going to start taxing, or they're going to start raising the prices of cigarettes, effective at midnight. So the main characters frantically drive around the city to buy as many cigarettes as possible, cigarette packs. It's a funny movie. It's interesting that, I mean, I know smoking is huge in China and Hong Kong, as it is in a lot of places in the world, but probably more prevalent in China, I would say. But it's interesting how they didn't like really bring too much negative light to smoking. It seemed like more of a like you should smoke because it makes you more social type of movie. But but anyways, I thought it's a pretty cool movie where I like the characters in the movie and they're mildly interesting. I thought it's worth a watch if you're trying to learn Cantonese like I am, or if you're just interested in Hong Kong cinema. I think it's definitely worth a watch. It's not just a kung fu movie, so like they make other movies, guys. Anyways, Yvonne, what did you do?
I've been watching a lot of, as Nuggetwood is gonna come right back. A lot of the UK chef Gordon Ramsay in a show called Kitchen Nightmares. Kitchen Nightmares is on Amazon Prime, included with Amazon Prime, so I've been watching it a lot, and it has done multiple things for me. It has encouraged me to cook more.
Very nice.
Ironically. And it's just been a lot of fun. And I got Laura into it too, so we've been watching it together.
That's great.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of really lousy restaurants that are super in debt, and Gordon Ramsay comes in to fix their decor, the kitchen, the menu, everything that's possible to try and get these restaurants back on track.
That's
awesome.
It
is at once disgusting and great, and it's fantastic. You can watch some like best of YouTube clips from the Kitchen Nightmares YouTube
we got our video blocked because I played a trailer of a movie. I think it was the Chasing the Dragon trailer, so I don't know if we should play any trailers for like a TV show, even if
that's fine.
Yeah,
I'm talking about like in your personal life.
I thought
highly recommend.
Put it in the background.
No, I just highly recommend on a personal level.
I think I've
taking
seen
a look
some.
at this show.
I think I've seen some. I've seen a couple episodes. I think it's a funny show. Obviously, Gordon Ramsay's so funny. I think he's hilarious, man.
He's awesome. And it's just like a bunch of chefs that are just lying straight to his face. Like, when did you cook this? Yesterday. And then he goes back to the kitchen and looks at like the chicken batch, and it's like slimy, or there's blood in the pan from the beef.
It's Netflix on Netflix.
Amazon Prime.
Okay, I still have Amazon Prime. Cool.
So until that runs out, because the price isn't going to.
I think I've still locked in the student price, but I think I might cancel it. I don't know. I don't really buy too much from Amazon anymore. But that's my own personal discretion.
But as a response to watching a lot of Kitchen Nightmares, I have cooked a lot. I did some Vietnamese style spring rolls. I had Julien's like cucumber, red pepper, carrot. Did some radishes. You
gotta do the pickled carrots.
I know. What I really should have done was pickled red onion and pickled carrot.
Yeah.
But I just I didn't think about it in time. So I should have done those, and I also had radish, scallion, and cilantro. But I did it all. The protein was the pulled pork that I made.
Yeah.
Basically, cool. I made a bunch of pulled pork, and I was like, "How can I not eat this in the same way over and over and over again?"
Well, that's what it's for, man.
So I did it with the spring rolls.
That's how you get creative.
And then I did, with my Vietnamese spring rolls, a Thai satay peanut sauce. But the Thai peanut sauce is just delicious. I've been making it since college, basically, and I love it.
Nice.
It's like basically condensed, it's not condensed milk. It's coconut milk, like the red curry paste, unsweetened natural peanut butter.
Yeah.
And a couple other things. And it just makes a really rich, creamy peanut sauce that isn't overbearing, which some peanut sauces can be. So I liked that. Then I also made a tiramisu.
Very cool. Sounds
good. Those were my cooking adventures this week. One of these days, Julien will really talk extensively about the stuff that he cooks, because it's much cooler than what I cook.
I don't cook I cook, but that sounds really great. I'm excited that you're cooking more.
Yeah, essentially, I'm prepping to be your sous chef once you start up.
I'm gonna need one. I hope to not cook in the kitchen. No, I would love to cook. Exciting.
And so I also saw Laura did a play.
Nice.
She devised a play with a group of other actors. So they took an old diary that they found in a bookstore and basically devised a 30-minute or so play, and then had a small talk back at the end, discussing the play and the process of creating the devised play. So it was pretty interesting. Some of it went above my head in terms of its like kind of it's very artsy. In terms of like the interpretation of the material, so it's not a straightforward recreation of the events or things, but it was I think very good and a very interesting way of piecing or like taking out the interesting parts of this diary that two of the people took 6 months transcribing.
Yeah.
And then taking that process of transcribing, the process of understanding what's happening, the collaborative process, and all coming out to create this play. I thought it was very, very cool. And I'm pretty proud of her. And
great.
After that, to celebrate, and here's the point I was trying to get to, we had some Moet Chandon Nectar Imperial.
Very nice. That's a very
is
nice champagne.
It's a very nice champagne.
French know what they're doing.
Yeah, I highly recommend.
If you can afford a bottle,
afford a bottle, the Nectar Imperial. It's super smooth. It's not acidic. It's not too dry. It's not too sweet. It is a good balance of flavors and taste.
I've had it before. It's very nice.
I have had it once before in my entire life, and to have it a second bottle of it is like a kind of a special gift that I didn't think I'd have at this age. But hey, I get to sometimes have really nice champagne for no good reason, other than the fact that I'm surrounded by people who have access to fantastic wine.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, especially since I'm a big champagne lover, having come from an Eastern European family.
Bubbly is good. Bubbly is good. I love sparkling wines, and champagne is delicious.
I agree fully. But you know what else I have begun to consume a lot of recently in terms of media?
What is that?
The N.F.L. So I am a member of a fantasy football league.
So am I, Yvonne, actually. You got $20 on the line here. Come on.
I only have 5 this year. And so I'm a guy who is literally invested in the N.F.L. And with the N.F.L. coming back this weekend for its first weekend of the regular season, I think it's time that we kind of take a second, sit back, and kind of think about, should football even exist as a sport?
Yeah.
Should we be watching football?
Now, you might be coming in here thinking, what the hell are you talking about, guys? But, I mean, it's a full-on contact sport that people are quite literally, putting their lives on the line when they play. So, and that can range from, just your peewee sports kids to all the way to the NFL. So This is a very dangerous sport. And, you and I both, I do actually really like football. You like football as well. I mean, I know you also play rugby.
So I played rugby for a while in high school and like a cup of coffee basically in college until I was afraid that I would break things because people got much bigger in college, and I was
very true.
I had a lot of endurance and a modicum of speed, but I wasn't about to keep up with the weight of these guys, so I was a bit worried.
Yeah, they had regiment diets, possibly. Who knows?
They just lifted, and I never did.
That's also true. Yeah,
like there's a big problem there. But yeah, I never played football other than like street pickup football in school. I did grow up in Tennessee, so we played a lot of football there.
Right. It's a very it is. It's not the American pastime. But it is the most popular sport in America for sure. The NFL, and I don't know if that's because football is particularly interesting to Americans or if it's because of all the advertisement. It's probably a little bit of the both. There is so much money pumped into the NFL, and they make so much money in return that it's hard to turn on a TV without while during the NFL season without hearing at least a little bit about football. So it is pumped into the American persona. It's a very popular game.
Yeah,
for
and
good
it
reasons.
makes
a
a
cool game.
ton of money. So the NFL revenue. NFL teams' revenue share topped $8 billion in 2017.
Every team.
So the books show that NFL teams raked in about $255 million each.
That's crazy. And what about the NFL as an organization? I guess they.
So $8 billion of revenue just means that it's like it covered the cost, and then $8 billion on top of that is what I assume that means from Reuters.
I see.
Basically, that report came in.
That's crazy. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's more than we spent.
It's an increase of
NASA.
4.9% from 2016.
Jesus Christ! So it's only getting more popular. So all the better that we discuss this topic of, I believe. As we have an article in the background right now from the New York Times where they reference an article from a broad survey article. Sorry, that's not the right word, but there was an article published in the Journal of American Medical Association, which I assume is a very highbrow, medical psychology type journal. I'm not sure. I've never read anything from that journal. But Yvonne,
what is the thing where you rank they rank the
impact factor?
Yeah.
Impact factor of this journal, I'm not sure. The impact factor, for people who do not know, for a peer-reviewed journal is typically, I believe it's just a number, but it's a higher number is better, and
47.6.
Right. So journals in that article typically get 47, on average, get 47 references. So other articles reference their journal articles. So that's
which is higher than Science, for instance.
Yes. So this is a very highbrow journal, and it looks like they've cross-sectioned over the years many different brains. So if you for science, obviously, of NFL players. So it looks like we have this simple bar chart here where it I believe, if I'm not mistaken, what this chart is saying is how many of these NFL players died to a disease known as C.T.E, which is chronic trauma. I don't know the E.
Chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
That's why I don't know the E word.
Encephalopathy.
Encephalopathy.
Yeah, it's right there. It's 2 paragraphs above the chart there.
Okay. Right. So here's the word.
Yeah.
Got it.
So this is a pretty intense. So it's not necessarily that people died due to CTE. It is those who were examined all had some level of CTE,
which can lead
from the brain examination.
Yeah.
Which can mean a multitude of things. So CTE is a complex brain disorder, disorder that has multiple symptoms, and they can what is really intense about it is that the symptoms can appear from 8 to 10 years after an athlete endures repetitive mild traumatic brain injuries. So those are the things that we see the most when we see an NFL play of, like, you want those hard hits. You want if you think about the offensive line and the defensive line just clashing against each other every single play. Those are the kinds of things where you could get mild traumatic brain injuries. Mm-hmm. And so there's like the first stage of symptoms, and the school year has officially started. I'm getting a lot of calls from the school district for jobs. Anyway, ADHD, confusion, disorientation, dizziness, and headaches is stage 1. Stage 2 includes things like memory loss, social instability, impulsive behavior, and poor judgment. These are the things that we most commonly associate with increased levels of violence and impulse behavior, or like social instability, poor judgment, impulse behavior, all combining to higher levels of drug or alcohol abuse, and then also compounded with violence. Third or fourth stage progression is dementia, movement disorders, hypomania, which is, as we discovered because we didn't know, reduced degree of facial expression, speech impediments, sensory processing disorder, tremors, vertigo, deafness, depression, and suicidality. Some of these things we can probably see if you've seen like clips of Muhammad Ali. I would say that some of those also seem like symptoms that Muhammad Ali has gone through.
Right. So, for instance, I guess this is sort of you don't die from C.T.E. You die from any of these other possible symptoms that you could get because as a result of having C.T.E. I guess it's sort of similar to AIDS and HIV in that respect. You don't die from having AIDS. You die because you got another disease because your immune system was suppressed because you had AIDS, for instance. Or at least my understanding of how AIDS works in your body.
Because HIV and AIDS targets the T cells, and those are the immune cells. So it weakens your body's ability to defend itself. In a similar way, C.T.E. Exacerbates other things that you could be going through as an individual, either increased violence, depression, things like that. So,
and a lot of I don't know if you said sorry when you're going down that list, but a lot of these players end up very aggressive towards their later years or a couple years after their retirement from the N.F.L. And we're specifically talking about the N.F.L. here. Of course, I would assume a lot of boxers have a similar symptoms, and it sort of leads to depressive thoughts and things like that. So it can be very sad and honestly scary as well to think about. But yeah, and also I believe a lot of players end up committing suicide as well due to depression and aggression and many different complex issues that I don't have any part in having any understanding of how that feels to be, but
right. And so Dr. McKee, who, when this study was published in 2017, wanted to make a note that there isn't a known, like, necessarily a link between what does it say, that there isn't a definitive link between suicide and CTE,
right?
But it has been shown that football players who have committed suicide have many times had CTE when they've had their brains examined. For instance, the most famous case of this happening was Junior Seau.
Yes.
Junior Seau was a linebacker who played for several different teams, including the New England Patriots. And when he died at the age of 43 due to a self-inflicted gunshot wound where he shot himself in the chest in order for his brain to be examined for what the new emerging science of CTE was being discovered after Dr. Bennett Omalu had been doing significant breakthroughs in terms of the study of repeated traumatic brain injuries.
Right. So I mean, that's a very tragic story, but at least they got another brain to do an autopsy on, and examine a little bit more. So it's also sad to think about, but I mean, Junior Seau knew that he was very conscious of that football, because of his repeated brain injuries and head injuries that he suffered from, because he played for the N.F.L, and was told to and obviously he was a very good player, but because he was a very good player because he was put into situations where he would put himself in danger and cause himself brain injury, because this is why we wanted to talk about this, right?
Yeah.
The way the sport has evolved since its inception in like 1960, or I don't know when they first started playing football professionally.
Well, I think we're about to hit the 100
100 years.
season.
Sorry. Oh, so 1920 then, almost.
Something like that, yeah.
Broadway John
from the
right? I don't know.
Hold on. Yeah, it was the NFL was formed in 1920 as the American Professional Football Association.
Okay, so since its inception in 1920 and to now, the way that the sport has evolved is the game, if you are able to find any sort of old footage of football players, even 50 years ago, hopefully you can find that the game is not nearly as aggressive and not nearly as impactful on these players' lives, I don't think, or at least, well, actually I don't want to say that, because we didn't do these types of brain autopsies on NFL players. It wasn't NFL, but the American Football Association players back in the 50s, I'm guessing. So maybe it was just as bad. But I would assume that the game has gotten more aggressive, in that these players are more willing to dive headfirst, for instance, or make a tackle that they would otherwise regret in the long run, because they wanted to win the game.
There's also the level of just
strength,
athleticism and strength that has been increasing over time.
Because
as we have greater health science, like sports science, over the past 20-30 years, we have increased the speed, size,
look at Junior
dynamicism.
Seau. He's 6'3", 250 pounds. That is not someone that you want to run into at all. That guy will not budge at all. So that's crazy.
And that's not to speak of people who are linemen or something like that, whose weight consistently ranges into the 300 pound area.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just, and these are people who at 240 pounds or 250 pounds can run a 4.740.
Yes, right. So their literal momentum is inertia as well is crazy. It's nuts. It's very impressive. I'm not gonna lie. That's so cool. The physics of it, but goddamn.
Just it's an incredible amount of force that's being put into these hits, and they're taught from a young players are taught from a young age. The lower your center of gravity is, the harder it is for someone to bring you down, or the easier it is for you to bring other people down. What does that require? Lowering your head a lot of times to initiate contact and things like that. So it is a combination of being taught how to tackle in a certain kind of way, probably over the course of their lives.
Yeah.
Throwing their bodies into positions where they can reap high rewards for, the hard hits, the show-stopping plays that you see a lot of the times. And what was it for many years before C.T.E. became a thing? It was like you had compilations of videos of like the hardest hits in the N.F.L. and people were really into it. And if you go to a game, I don't know how many games you've been to,
I've
but
never
like
been to an NFL game.
I've been to a few now,
The
and
Bills.
like you're yelling for these guys to hit each other. Like
Right.
it is a thing. Like
It's
they're
a
like, "Hit
spectacle.
him."
It's awesome.
Yeah. It's modern gladiators
not
who
awesome.
are going to. We're probably cheering them on to create long-term damage to their health.
Right.
And it is something that I don't think that the NFL has an answer for, even though, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're discussing up until this point has already been known or covered. Watch the movie Concussion for the most nice version of this story ever. It doesn't actually expose the real things. There are many different former NFL players or other places where you can read more in-depth analysis of what's going on in terms of CTE and its connection to football, which
Right.
the NFL denied for a very long time. But just like smoking, like tobacco companies denied that smoking leads to lung cancer.
Right. And
In any
oil
case,
companies design, global
carbon
warming.
footprints.
Yeah. Look, where there's money to be made, people will fight until the death, until they, if just to keep making the money. So it's
the way that the NFL has decided to protect players and limit the amount of mild traumatic brain injury
Yes.
is the 2018 NFL rule change, the use of helmet. So basically, the use of helmet rule says that you cannot use your helmet to initiate and make contact with an opponent.
Mm-hmm.
So that includes lowering the head, initiating contact with any part with the helmet to any part of the opponent. Doesn't have to be the head or neck area, and making contact on an opponent, both offense and defense. A player can be ejected if he creates a linear body posture, so like a straight line, or delivering the blow had an unobstructed path to his opponent and contact was clearly avoidable. And what's really interesting is we've had a lot of these fouls called in the preseason.
Yeah.
So in the first few games, like this rule was being called every time, and then it loosened up. And we thought that going into the season, that this rule really so it might be used. Will it really help alleviate mild traumatic brain injury? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think that it's strong enough to really change the centrality of football, which is like
Right.
hitting hard is something that you see on a daily basis when you watch a football
Definitely.
game. And we did see, interestingly enough, the first person ejected in a professional football game, in a regular season game, for this the use of this rule. According to the NFL, NFL.com, Sean Williams was ejected for a hit on Andrew Luck. That was the video that Julien was just playing in the background. It took less than a quarter of the first Sunday in the 2018 NFL season for the initial ejection due to the new hit to the helmet rule. So basically, it's a late hit on Andrew Luck, who was already going to the ground. Bengals safety Sean Williams initiates a helmet-to-helmet contact and was ejected.
Yeah.
So this is and to quote the NFL.com, the brutal, unnecessary hit to the helmet is the type of strike the league is trying to get rid of in football. The new rule, which is designed to enhance player safety by removing the technique of lowering the head to initiate and make contact with an opponent, has been a source of confusion for players and coaches this preseason. The rule was approved by NFL team owners at the annual league meeting in March. So this is it. It's solved. When we're never going to have CTE again.
Yeah,
or concussions.
clearly. For NFL players, anyways. They're gonna be totally fine. No, I think it seems like that this is clearly NFL's first step, hopefully, into reducing and hopefully eliminating and eliminating this this traumatic, chronic traumatic concussions that their players are receiving, and securing the safety of their their prized possessions. These are the reason why people watch the NFL. It's because of all these players. The players are amazing. So it's in NFL's best interest to keep them safe, right? But it doesn't seem like they're doing enough, in that it's 2018, and scientists have been discussing this for many years now, and it's taken until 2018 for them to enact one rule that is supposed to save these players. I don't think so. This is not enough, and it's way too late, in my opinion. But at least you could say from the other side, at least they're making a move towards that direction, right? At least they're making a move towards securing these players' lives, essentially.
Yeah, but how much of this is like an actual rule that will help? Okay. Yeah, like the motive behind it, like of course they want player safety to be part of it, right? That's what they're explicitly saying. The implicit suggestion of using this helmet-to-helmet rule. But is it really going to change the game enough to be a safeguard against these this very dangerous disease of C.T.E?
Right. I don't. I mean, based off of what you read me the rule earlier before we started, and it's very technical. It's I mean, as as most rules are in the NFL, I think they're like, I don't know, if you read the rule book for the NFL and what constitutes a foul, it's going to be worded in a certain way that tries to make it seem way more complicated than it is. Honestly, it's not that complicated with holding, for instance, or like false start or that type of thing. Is it called false start? I don't know. What's the one where they
yeah, there's a false start, there's encroachment, okay. There's different things like
right
that, yeah.
So they're going to use the most complicated wording possible for no reason, but because it's the NFL. But it seems like, from what you read me, it seems like a very complicated rule that I don't necessarily know the ref can make the call at the time. It seems like a lot to process in that one split second, and then that still doesn't stop that play from happening. It may prevent future plays, perhaps, I don't know, but that hit still happened, like for instance Andrew Luck, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
first game back after I think multiple seasons of missing games.
Yeah, guy got hit hard in the head, and this rule didn't prevent it. It sort of maybe. Who's the guy that hit him? Williams.
Sean Williams.
Williams. Maybe Sean Williams will be more careful in the future. I don't know. I'm not sure if he will. Right? It's not like maybe he suffered too many. I shouldn't say that. I don't know. It's like. I don't know if it will stop anything, but I guess it's better than nothing, right? So that's what we were coming to the conclusion on earlier.
So I guess the conclusion is that the NFL is doing a minimum of attempting to help the players. I don't think that they're doing enough to reach out for players that have retired or are suffering from conditions. Yeah. They have retreated in terms of accepting responsibility for anything, even though we can see a clear link between playing football. Even there, like place kickers or punters have C.T.E symptoms from the examination that Dr. Ann McKee did. So I think that there's a clear evidence, and there's not enough responsibility taken in a way that could, rectify the situation for developing programs for helping retired players or ex-football players cope through it. Not just the superstars, but everybody who goes through the league. And yes, that's part of the NFL Players Association's responsibility, but the league also needs to be heavily responsible for managing that kind of program and making sure that things go in a better way. And I think yes, we're focusing right now on NFL players, but let's also think about how rules like we have kids from the age of like what 6 years old wearing
Yeah.
helmets and tackling each other.
Yeah, they're
Um,
playing a full contact sport too while their brain is still developing.
yeah,
And of
I
course,
mean,
yeah.
like concussions are
Crazy.
severe traumatic brain injuries. Like
Yes.
in the grand scope of things, like okay, maybe they get labeled as mild traumatic brain injuries, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
not. But so NFL players, like for instance, one Tyler Sash was a former safety for the Giants who was let go after he suffered his fifth concussion in the NFL.
Yeah.
Those are concussions that we know of in the N.F.L. This is not to say that those are the only 5 concussions that person has ever
In his
had.
life. Yeah, I mean,
So it's a
obviously,
buildup of concussions, or like even not even a full like diagnosed concussion, but like all these other like clashes
you
of the
have to
heads
play
that
pretty
you've
hard
had.
to get into the NFL to begin with. So you have to take it pretty seriously. And it's not even like, okay, so sure, he has 5 diagnosed concussions, right? So you can have a concussion that's so mild that maybe the doctor's not even going to see it, but it's still going to affect you. So the doctor might, the doctor on the field, I don't even know if they're doctors, but the person on the field that, diagnoses you maybe we should take you out of the game. That person, I'm not sure if they're actual doctors, but I assume they have some sort of medical training. The people that spray the cold spray guys.
So in the NFL today there are team doctors and medical
Yes.
personnel. They also have independent people who are doctors watching the game who
Okay.
are looking out for concussions and concussion symptoms.
Okay.
So they'll do an analysis of
That's cool.
a player who comes out. But there have been times when that isn't really successful.
Rotendo, we're talking about concussions because this is the topic of the podcast today. We're talking about the concussions in the context of the NFL because NFL Sunday is happening. The first NFL Sunday of the year is happening today. So that's why we're discussing it. So basically, if that, it's like it, as you were saying, it all builds up, right? You can have one concussion and you'll probably be fine in your life, right? But if you have multiple concussions throughout your life, even if they're just very mild ones, it still adds up to a possible diagnosis of C.T.E. And that can be very, very traumatic in your life going forward. So these players are being put on, held up to a high pedestal. They're like the epitome of athleticness in American sports. Maybe you can argue basketball players are more athletic. I don't know, but that's not the point.
They're up there.
They're up there. These guys are
they're huge and they're fast.
Yeah.
And they're super strong.
Right. So, and I it's absolutely amazing that they spend so much time working out and honing their skills, and they're the best players in the world, right? So I don't know, it's like I don't know how many people are looking out for their health. I don't know how many of the players are looking out for their own health, but there needs to be some more education on this topic, and so that's actually why we wanted to talk about it, Brotendo. I don't know how many fans know about this, right? And you go to the game, you yell at the guy on the other team, why are you such a bitch? Because maybe he didn't want to, have a concussion. I don't know, that type of situation. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm pulling this out,
And
right?
there's the other thing is just like examining what is the role and responsibility of the NFL promoting football at such a tremendous level, like their epitome of sports. They're the league that makes the most money, and when you look at the younger ages, so it's basically from Pee-wee on, right? You have these kids who are taking hits to the head, like Pop Warner, to like middle school, high school, college. So the amount of physical punishment that a person is taking has just built up to such a level that when they get to the NFL, it's crazy, to the point where like you might have symptoms of C.T.E emerging while that player is a professional player, because the concussions, like the C.T.E started when they were in high school.
Right.
They took enough hits, they got concussions enough when they were in high school that by the time they're in their N.F.L playing career, it is 8 to 10 years later from when they first started. And so they can have depression, social inabilities, things that push them to substance abuse, already founded from that time forward.
Yeah, very exciting.
So when we put in our combined $25 for our fantasy football teams, and then go on to Twitter and yell at them, hey, how come you didn't score that touchdown? How come you let that team score on you? You know, what is our role in developing C.T.E, and how do we as fans really have to deal with that? I mean, I'm gonna continue watching football. It's something I'm not super proud of as like a morality question.
I don't even watch the games. I just have money invested. I'm just gambling at this point.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I really enjoy the sport. I just wish it
is a cool sport.
As judgmental to people's health.
That's the sad part. It is a very cool sport. The reason why it's so popular is because it's a really cool sport, and there shouldn't be any shame in enjoying a cool sport, but you should also know that these players are for in some ways being abused. You could look at it that way. Maybe they're abusing themselves, but they're also abiding by the rules of the N.F.L, and they're playing the game that the N.F.L has sculpted, so it's not entirely their fault, right? It's actually the majority of the fault is on the N.F.L, so I think. But it's a multifaceted problem. But
let's hope that there is some light in the future for this problem.
Yeah.
And that people can enjoy. We can figure out a way that we can enjoy football. Or if we can't, like, I would rather not have football and have people live a full life than, be part of a system that causes the early onset death or dementia or like physical health problems of other people.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that we haven't known this about like boxers, right? Dementia pugilista has existed as a diagnosable condition for many, many years. We know that boxers take way too many hits to the head and they suffer for it later in life. And I don't watch boxing.
Yeah.
It's plain and simple.
Well, I mean, it's also usually pay-per-view, so it's very expensive to watch boxing, but I agree with you. I don't watch boxing either. I also find it, I watched the Manny Pacquiao fight. For instance, that's the first boxing fight I ever watched. The one where he fought Floyd Mayweather.
Mayweather Pacquiao. Right?
Yeah, that was supposed to be the fight of the century or whatever, and that was the most. I didn't find it very entertaining, but that's also, I hear, because it was a boring boxing match. But I digress.
Yeah, it was just too style. It was like the styles.
It was for the money. Yeah. So that's boxing for you, right? So I don't know. Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of concussions in boxing. And maybe we should, take concussions a little more seriously in this country. Although, obviously, boxing is not just an American sport. There's plenty of foreigners that play boxing. Oh, boy.
Yeah, boxing is a global sport.
I know.
And,
I know. It's whatever. Look, what is there? So usually we come down on these topics of that are huge problems in our country. This is a very large problem, even despite what you might think. This is a huge problem. What is there to actually do to impact the change on this sport? Usually we come down on it. You should go to your local elections, and that's where you start. That's where change starts, because they're usually political issues, but this is somewhat political. What can we do?
I think no one should play football until they get to college, basically.
Yeah, or don't enroll your son, or it's usually, it has to be a son. Why is it only a male sport? I don't know.
I just think that football is it's so difficult to watch or understand as a concept at the younger ages. Okay, maybe in high school we can start with some stuff, but I think personally, having played rugby, I think the less pads and protective gear that you wear, the less you will sacrifice your body.
That's what I think. That's the reason why. Well, no, we don't. Well, I don't know the statistics.
So, for instance, in boxing,
players, right? Yeah.
In boxing, they introduced the gloves, right? Yeah. And actually, severe injuries like deaths or whatever increased because people could deal out more punishment with a protected glove than they could bare knuckled. Right. You would break your hands or something more often.
Before that person died, you would break your hand.
So I think that there needs to be a lot of restriction in terms of contact. I think flag football or whatever for the younger ages. Once you get into high school, maybe padless football or something more like a rugby. If you want to teach the skills and have those skills available in a sport that is similar to N.F.L, but like flag or padless or something that isn't going to lead to these insane hits, which can cause early brain trauma. And I mean, I come from soccer where concussions can happen in a soccer game, like from heading the ball or whatever. Yeah. And there have been cases of C.T.E. from soccer players due to hitting the ball with their head, etc. But I think it's significantly lower. And we were reading a study that was conducted basically rugby players at the collegiate level suffer injuries similar to soccer players and at a significantly lower rate than American football players. Right. So I think that attempting to lower the rate of injury at any level is super important, and I would just remove hitting and pads as much as possible up until maybe the collegiate level.
Yeah, that's why. Okay, yeah, we could go on for. We've gone on long enough. All right, we'll shut up. It's all right. It's football, great sport, dangerous sport. Rugby, similar, but at least people aren't, getting concussions at the rate at which they're getting them in football.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyways, Yvonne, thanks so much for bringing this topic to my attention. I'm glad we had this conversation.
Thank you, bro.
And of course, we end our podcasts every single week in a song in a segment called Hungover Radio. This is where you, the listener, can send in music for us to play at the end of the podcast. Hopefully it's a song that you wrote, produced, played an instrument on, sang, etc., because we want to share your music at the end of our podcast to the rest of the people listening to the podcast. Hopefully that is okay with you guys. You can send in your music to gaminghungover@gmail.com. The links are in the description below. And Yvonne, you have a song this week?
I do not.
All right. Well, I have a song. It's from The Messenger, which is a side-scrolling game that I discussed last week, as it came out last week. It's a very fun game on Switch and PC. It's sort of like Ninja Gaiden. This song is titled The Frozen Light from Glacial Peak. I hope you guys enjoy this song, and I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Thanks for stopping by, Brotendo and Nugget Wood. You guys are awesome. And Yvonne, when are you going to be streaming? tonight?
In a little bit, I'm gonna grab some grub, probably around 7:30 to 8 Eastern Standard Time.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you typically stream on Sundays around that time. You can go follow him at Comrade Boyar on Twitch. And, yeah, the link's also in the description. So, Vaughn.
Yo.
This was an awesome podcast. I hope to do it again with you next week.
Bye.
See ya.